All right, hopefully I did that right because I never usually record these meetings. So I wanted to welcome all of you here. Thank you
It
so much for
should tell
coming
me
this
that you
afternoon.
are recording.
I can see it on mine. Yeah, hopefully we're good. All right, well, thank you so much for coming this afternoon to listen to Dr. Tomas Jaehn, who is the director, or I don't know what your official title is, director at the Center for Southwest Research at the University of New Mexico. And so he'll tell us a bit more about that. Those of you who are in my Intro to Historical Study class know that we are looking at primary sources, archives, and those topics this week and next. This will be a great way to delve further into those topics and issues. So with that, I will turn the time over to Dr. Jaehn.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Tomas, and I'm the director of the Center for Southwest Research and Special Collections. Here is where we keep the fun stuff, the exciting stuff, the old stuff. That's the only good place to work in a library as far as I'm concerned. You may know and you may not need it, but we are open by appointment Mondays through Thursdays under COVID guidelines. We have a form that you have to fill out, which is basically this one here. It's also, I'll show you later, it's on the, on the website as well. And so if you wanted to come in to see some research material that's only in our department, this is the form you fill out. We only allow 2 people in at a time. You have to fill out that you haven't left the state, and it's only for 90 minutes at a time because of COVID. So this is something to consider. I am a lot better to convince students that they should at least once visit a special collections department. We are, for some people, we are weird. We are strange. You walk into a room where everything is quiet. You walk in a room where somebody looks up, where the librarian looks suspicious at times. It is a place where a lot of money and a lot of material that is preserved. But whether you continue your studies with a master's or a PhD in something, or if you work for a particular job, anybody who is working in humanities, social science, STEM probably less so, but still, you may have to visit a special collections. And ours, compared to Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and Library of Congress, we are really a nice and as friendly a place as you can find that gives you an idea how special collections functions. If we take your bag outside, or if we ask you to only use a pencil, or when we ask you not to pull out an item out of folder, there are all purposes to it. They have really nothing to do with you as a person. This has to do with us, that if you bring your bag in, you could by accident put a piece of paper in that you didn't want to steal. We know that, but it could happen. In my previous job, a person came by 2 years later telling me he took by accident this 4-page report in his briefcase, and he returned it to us 2 years later. So all these rules feel intimidating, but they are not really meant that way. They are protection for the material that we are supposed to keep for the next 300, 400, 500 years and protect it for preservation and for future students to use. So I would encourage you, when COVID is over or when you are in the library, to at least peek into our special collections that is in a very nice, the old part of the library. Before I get to what we have in special collections, I want to go briefly into, and I think I have to stop sharing for a moment and bring this up. I'd like to go briefly into our library catalog. And it didn't come over, so I need to share this again. I haven't quite figured that out. It hasn't loaded on my other computer. Now we have. Okay. So this is similar to any other computer or a library database. This is our catalog. I'm going to type in Native American children. I'll forget the apostrophe, but books. So there is plenty of stuff coming up. In our catalog, you can narrow it down here. Is your catalog the same, by the way?
It's very similar, if not exactly the same.
Oh, so we are not on the same database, though. Okay.
No, although I think that from CNM, you can use WorldCat to search UNM libraries.
What I entered is really irrelevant. I just wanted to make a point here. If you are in the topic of Native American picture books, you find this book here, and usually that's the end for many of the students. They will look for the book or a book, they find a book, and they're done. What I would encourage you is to look at the subject terms. The subject terms give you perhaps, for whatever you are studying or researching, a much better idea than a general title like Native American children's books. This book may very well be what you are looking for, but if you actually scroll a little bit and you look at all the subject headings, this is an international catalog, so some German library put their record on and is also in there. But you might be more interested in Indian authors, illustrations that may be, if you click on it, you will get a whole new, in this case you don't. Let's take Intellectual Life of Indians. You will get a whole new array of books that you may or may not have thought of. So my encouragement when you look for books that you are interested in, take a look at the subject headings that are attached to each book. Some are better than others, but it gives you a better idea of what subject headings there are, and there might be one there that is closer to what you are researching. So the other thing I wanted to briefly mention, the library spends probably $2-3 million a year on databases, especially during COVID right now, where you have limited access. You want to consider databases. If you are specializing into something, you will have to find among all these databases, and they are just listed by alphabetical order. Under A, there is 15, under B, there's 30, whatever. But you will have to find journals or databases that fit your needs. There are so many out there. And some are so narrowly specific that help you to no end. What I just wanted, because I do history more often than not, I'll go into J. Here you have, it's not loading enough, but you have 4 databases, and one of them, one is plants. That's a highly science-oriented one, but you have JSTOR. I have to put my, hold on, I'll put it in here for now. And I think you have to do that too when you enter remotely. So here you can search for articles, for reviews, for books. Here are all the subjects. You can click them all if you want to just browse. You can narrow them down to whatever magazine. So this business title has 210 titles in it. Ecology and evolutionary biology has 69 titles. Education, you can narrow it down so you're not getting 10,000 articles. And somewhere you can also narrow it to articles with full text. How does it work here? No, it comes up once you search. You can limit it to full text so you can actually read it either there or you download it to your computer. But you might want, for whatever research you are doing, you should keep in mind all these databases. Another one, let me see if that still exists or if we still subscribe to. HathiTrust is another one. HathiTrust functions very much like Google Books. It has a lot of books in there that are from, first of all, they're copyright free. So they are full text and they come from the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century. And quite often they are books that most libraries cannot afford, because if you find a first edition, and I'm a snob in my special collections, I want hard copy, first editions, dust jackets, preferably signed. So in HathiTrust, and the symbol here means under COVID, they have it open. So I think you don't have to even put in your name right now. But HathiTrust works similarly like Google Books, but it has more of the historical books in there. And if you cannot find it in Google Books, you may want to look here in HathiTrust. Historical abstracts is history of everything, where you get a 1 or 2 or 3 paragraph information about a particular article or book from indexing from journals that may also help you. If you are have to write a term paper for Dr. Morgan, one of the better things is to find an article from 2020 or 2019 and just look at the footnotes, because then you get the most recent articles on that particular topic. So there's historical abstracts. If you need something quantitative with historical statistics and again, the university library spends $2-3 million a year to maintain these databases for students. Obviously, you can also already limit it out here on the platform entry. Let me get out of this and let me go. Where is my and again here, the ones that I use for history is HathiTrust, JSTOR, Project Muse. They all sort of do the same, fill the same needs. And then historical abstracts get you to broader topics. This is our reading room in special collections. We call it the Anderson room. This is where we have the primary sources that we own. We bring them up per request, and I will go through what we have and what is a primary resource, and then we will look at how you can actually find those resources. Let me stop sharing for a second, because I would like to see everybody's face. And that is, what do you consider a primary source in the first place? I'll take anybody's answer.
A primary source is like something that's directly from the time period, maybe like an artifact or a piece of clothing or a journal. So it's something that is directly there from an original time period.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it is. However, sometimes it's a little foggy of what is a newspaper from 1870, which reports about an event in Zimbabwe, in Germany, in Japan. Is that necessarily a primary source when the journalist is not even there? It really depends on the need and on the purpose of what you are researching. If you are researching Japan, you may need more than a newspaper from that period. But if you are researching newspaper attitudes towards Japan in 1880, then it is certainly a primary source. So most primary sources are obvious. Sometimes they are a little, you can discuss if they are or if they aren't. And it's the same if Dr. Morgan were to donate his papers to me with his research on Columbus, New Mexico. Depending how I want to use the material, it could be just secondary sources because he did the research. So he did research about something. So then it may or may not be a primary source. If I want to know what faculties in 2020 or 2010 think about a certain historical topic, his notes are annotated, then it can certainly turn into a primary source. So primary sources are obvious, but in some cases, it depends. Let's see, let's go back to where we were. So again, and in terms of procedures, and I didn't take a picture, outside this room is where we have lockers. You would leave your backpacks out there. You leave your bags where your computers are in there, but you are allowed to take your computer in. You can have pencils either from us or you take them, you bring them in. And then you will request from the librarian or the archivist, whoever is on staff, they make you fill out a form. And you can request the material that is of interest to you. And here in the back, materials waiting on trucks for certain people who requested that and said, I'll come back tomorrow, so we are not shelving it. I'll show you a picture later. Our library has 3 lower levels of materials. Whoops. Manuscript material. This is a primary source. In this case here, this is a land grant document from 1840 or whatever it is, I'm not sure. And we keep those documents in asset-free folders and then put them in the boxes as you see it on the left. And again, how we get to those boxes, I'll do that separately after this little mini presentation. But we have manuscript documents, collections about 3,000–4,000 linear feet. Some documents are medieval, they are token documents, so we have some representation for studies and medieval studies in the history department. And we have modern materials from writers like Tony Hillerman, Rodolfo Anaya. We have business records of the First National Bank of Albuquerque. We have college records. We have collections that are 1 item. And we have collections that are 300 boxes. We have Senator Jeff Bingaman's papers, which is 900 boxes. More and more, in addition to boxes, we also get digital material, born digital, which we will keep in that format, and I'll show you later how we access it. So all the material that is listed in our catalogs is available to you. Whether you are a student of UNM or not, whether you are an undergrad or a grad or just an aficionado, if you find it and we have it, other than some Native American material, which is restricted and needs permission from the tribes or the pueblos, everything we own is public and you can come in and see it. Also, on the more mundane part or basic discussion, we don't have Xerox machines anymore. We only Xerox for two 95-year-old men who are coming in for the past 50 years and they still don't have a computer. And they know that we have a Xerox machine in the back, because otherwise we say we do not have a Xerox machine anymore. But for these two gentlemen, we still Xerox. Other than that, we have two scanners, which you either bring a thumb drive or you email it to yourself. It is a lot safer with a thumb drive because sometimes you scan 15 pages and then the notice says it's too big for an email. And then you have to start over again. So you are better off bringing a thumb drive to our place. These manuscript collections come in all sorts of formats. We have here bound volumes. They're probably ledgers of cash flow, or they are entries of customers in a business record. Some of them are in poor shape. That's a bummer. We have some in older boxes still, some in newer boxes. We have pamphlets, any imaginary format among archival material, we have it. And obviously also what I'm not saying here is we also have rare books. And so our books start from, again, the 1500s all the way up to 2020. Some of the rare books are rare, but not necessarily expensive. It is just, they made so few prints that we decide we put one copy into special collections or the Center for Southwest Research. Another format of primary sources are maps. Maps are a great tool to figure out A, if somebody was lying, or B, if you have sequential maps, how something changed over the decades. You can see that rivers change their direction when you have a map from 1880 and then one from 1920, and you can follow these kind of developments according to the maps. Some maps, and I didn't take a picture because nobody requested it, are simply, just because it's a map does not mean necessarily it is true. Just like with newspaper articles or whatever, we have 16th century, 17th century maps that show California as an island. Everybody, this is my prime example to show that just because it's printed, don't take it for granted it is true. Always figure out what is an author's slant, attention. Again, if you listen to the Supreme Court hearings today, you get an earful of what slant a certain person had, whether it's the senator or whether it's the Supreme Court candidate. But when you look at a map from the 1600s with California as an island, this is a prime example that people not necessarily did it right. Some of them at the time, cartography was really poor at the time. They may not have known. But what we do know is that even after they realized that California is not an island, they still made maps because they believed that there were mythical Amazon women living on that island. And so they portrayed that island for another 50 years before they finally attached California to the continent. And I had a few of those maps on the wall. And when tourists came, they see California as an island, then they always said that's how it should be. And I am always saying, yeah, we'll keep the north and we let the south be an island. But so maps, this one again are land grant maps. Apparently there was a researcher in who was studying land grants. So maps is a really good primary tool to keep in mind. Pictorial collections, photographs, posters, film, anything that you can imagine that fits under pictorial, we will have some. Our photographs are held like here on the left side, like in a box. All our photos are sleeved, so you don't need to wear gloves like you often see on TV or that you may have experienced in other places. We have also about, I don't know, 4,000-5,000 posters of every Latin American country and of every shade, all political posters to the left, but socialism, women's rights, education, you name it, there we have posters. And the interesting part is all our posters are online for you to view. This is how we store them. This is part of one of our floors, and we have about 3 of them at that size. They're all underground under the new part of the Zimmerman Library. And again, we have artistic, political, social films, movies, photos. We have glass plates, we have daguerreotypes. If you are interested in the history of photography, we don't necessarily have anything pertaining to New Mexico in some of the formats, but we can certainly help you with developing an idea of how photography itself went forward over the decades. What we also have, and I really like it, professors usually don't like how I mention it or how I phrase it, but we have a lot of clipping files. Sometimes they are called vertical files. This is a system from pre-computers. In the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s, libraries hired companies, or they did it themselves, one or the other. They hired companies and said, please look at these 50 newspapers, from the Washington Post to the Los Angeles Times, to the San Jose Mercury, whatnot, and clip everything to the following topics. Then the library lists the topics, and that is literature of the West, art in New Mexico, whatever they give them, and they clip it and they send it to the library. And the libraries then do these, what we call clipping files. In our case, sometimes we had a service, I believe, but by and large, we clipped the Santa Fe New Mexican, the Albuquerque Journal. I describe this material as too good to throw away, but not good enough to involve a cataloger to actually make it an item. So these folders are full of material. The good part is, if you find the right folder, some folders have 2 items in it, but other folders we maintain since 1930, they are yay thick. The nice part is you can come one day before your term paper is due, look at those folders, and you wouldn't want to cite a clipping file. You would want to cite New York Times, 1870, page 12. And then you look like you did research for the past 6 months on your topic, yet you can just come here and have it in one folder, and we did that for you. You just shouldn't quote the clip or cite the clipping file. You want to cite the item that you took out. And usually they say somewhere the date. Sometimes there is no date, then you, to be honest and fair, you will have to cite the clipping file. Anybody, any questions so far? That's okay.
Hello?
Then
Can-
go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't sure how to unmute my voice. I just had a question on the primary sources that we have in at UNM. Who decides where we keep our primary sources? And is it just primary sources that in regards to New Mexico, or do we have primary sources from other places as well?
Yeah. That's a very good question. We are not necessarily limited, but due to funding and money, we cannot collect everything. That's just a matter of fact. So UNM emphasizes Latin America, Native American, and the greater Southwest. In those three areas, we collect special collections material from individuals, from groups, from organizations. And also, but because UNM is a place where other departments provide doctoral degrees, I just took in, sometimes I buy the material, but sometimes just to make my department understand, in the beginning when I started in 2016, I bought for $3,000 a, what is an Irish poet? A famous one, obviously. No, I forgot the name. Not yet. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is I bought for $3,000 a signed first edition of that Irish poet because UNM has 3 Irish teaching professors or Irish subject teaching professors. So we need to look out for them as well. 2 years ago, I took in, it was a donation, so it was much easier, 50, 60 first editions of George Orwell. George Orwell, did he have, now I'm doing trivia. Did George Orwell have, oh no, that was not even George Orwell. That was Huxley, never mind. Huxley sent his cohorts to New Mexico on vacation in his Brave New World. But anyway, George Orwell, I took in 15 first editions of everything in foreign languages, in English, in British English, American English, mostly Brave New World and 1984. But my point is, yes, we are looking out a lot more for material in Latin America, the Southwest, and Native American. And Native American, we also stick closer to the West. We rarely do anything in Canada. If it's donated, I will decide on it, purchase this because money is limited. I don't. I wouldn't buy it. So did that sort of answer your question?
Yes, actually it did, but it led to another question.
Sure.
So if we have primary sources in regards to like Latin America and the Southwest, do we have primary sources about Columbus, since he kind of arrived in like Central America area and the Caribbean?
Yeah, Columbus, we do not, well, the last letter I saw that was for sale, and I think still is for sale and sits in a bank vault in Santa Fe, is $45,000. So I'm not going to spend that. But many of the Columbus correspondence and Columbus's materials, the older it gets, the more famous they were or are, the more likely you find them in facsimile. And in facsimile, we probably have some of his material. That is correct. The further you go back, the less likely you will find much primary original material in libraries. Unless, again, you are lucky, and I, to the date, do not understand the gentleman. Before this job here, I worked up in Santa Fe at the history library for the History Museum. And one day, this gentleman walks in from Albuquerque, and offered to donate a letter of George Washington.
Wow.
Why he didn't think of his place in Albuquerque, which to me would mean he should have gone first to special collections here at the university, he made that trip up to Santa Fe and donated a George Washington letter to the Chavez Library in Santa Fe. Very tricky sometimes, and now we're getting off the topic a little bit, is it legit for me to accept that letter? Is it missing somewhere? Did he steal it? The gentleman and his brother who owned the letter is appraised at $27,000. It was after he left office. But when you look at Mount Vernon databases, that letter is listed there as missing and only available in Xerox copy. That's what their database says. The gentleman, the two brothers who donated the letter to me, could trace the ownership, what we call provenance. They could trace it back to 1910, that their family had that letter. So
Wow.
I kept it. I kept it because 1910 was good enough a provenance for me that it wasn't stolen recently, at least. Mount Vernon as a library didn't exist then. But this is an issue with many of our institutions that people, again, in Santa Fe at the library, a young woman came in and offered me or wanted me to buy letters that she had from her grandma that had my stamp on it from the library. So grandma must have worked in my library in the 1920s, 1930s, took these letters home. There is also something called the law of replevin, which I could have invoked and say to the young woman, here is my stamp, this is a state document, I cannot give you money, but I'll keep the letters. She wanted $100. I didn't want to argue over $100. I just paid her $100, and I bought back letters that my library had owned in the first place. And there's litany, and some of the higher profile ones, they go to jail. The Getty Museum, their curator took in from Italy some artifacts that she knew were stolen. And finally, they traced it back, and she had to go to jail for a little while. And there are plenty of those where provenance is very important, but it is more important, it's equally important, but it is less of an issue in smaller institutions with local materials. It is when you get George Washington in, or Michelangelo, or Clay, or whatever famous artist, that's when you better get your T's crossed and your I's dotted in terms of what we call provenance. Did that answer that part of your question?
Yes, actually, that's very interesting.
Good. Anybody else? Okay. Let me see where if I have my other screen ready. No, I don't. So let me bring that screen up. Escape. Let's close this one out and this one. I'm sorry, I'm talking here to myself, but are we in time, Brandon? I have no idea what the timeline is here.
Yeah, we're good. I slated this as about an hour, so we have 15 minutes left, and if anybody, yeah, so we're good.
And I'll hurry a little bit, but anyway, this is our website. Here is what you find everything that we have done. On the right side, you find little tidbits of how to use a collection. If you want to use any of our material in an article that is beyond your thesis, term paper, dissertation, or your church newsletter, whatever it is. But usually you need to ask permission from us to use that letter or that photo or whatever it is. And other than when they are students for their term papers or so, we also charge what we call a use fee. And we call it a use fee because probably 80% of our materials, we have no clue who owns copyright, which is a whole other lecture if you are interested. The fact is that if Brandon writes me a letter, I own the letter. But Brandon, who wrote it, is the creator, and he is the owner of the copyright. I can use that letter and fold it up and make a doorstop out of it if I want to, but I could not go and publicize it without his permission. And that's the easy part. The copyright lawyers are wealthy lawyers. Then again, collection strength, I talked about it. Instruction is exactly what we do right now. For graduate students, every year we have 3-4 fellowships that pay $15,000 for the academic year, and the student has to process a collection. Since the funding comes from outside, we always worry in April if we get enough funding for that. And if we do, let me click on it. Can you actually, yes, you will be able to see. We will list it here. Usually it is a fellowship, which is what I call more a mentorship. You will be assigned to an archivist or a faculty in my department. And each faculty, depending on how many fellowships we are getting, one will do a collection in architecture, one will do a collection in pictorial, and one of my colleagues will do one in manuscripts. And we post this here and say what we somewhat expect in terms of expertise. And it is vague because we want to teach students how to process collections, how to become better students, better researchers. And some years it's competitive and we can actually decide per fellowship between 5, 6, 7 people. Sometimes it's just one person. My experience is more often than not, people apply for these fellowships because they need the funding and not because their specialty is English lit or whatever the paperwork, the archive is. Here is the link embedded for if you want to do on-site research that I mentioned in the introduction. If you want to come in and look at materials, you will have to fill out the form. On the left side here, and then just here, this is also interesting. We have a monthly lecture series. Next week, is it next week, 21? Yeah. Next week, a gentleman from Los Angeles will talk about the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado in 1864. All the lectures that we had in the past, I record them and they will be posted here. So they might help you on a particular topic. I would not consider them primary source. They're all academics or buffs who are interested in a particular topic, and you can see them here and look for, maybe there is one that is of interest to you. But what I really want to go to now is how would you find our manuscript collections? And we maintain basically 2 databases. Oops, I'm going too far. This is just your generic search in CSWR. If you don't know much of what you want to look at or what we have, you can just key it in and it gets you somewhere. But the more specific ones are the Rocky Mountain Online Archive. This is our database for manuscript collections, pictorial collection, architecture collections. You have to pay attention that there are 3 states on there. I'm going to say once as a caveat, we will by end of next year be going to a new platform. And so then this is out, but the new platform will be the same concept. So anybody, what's your interest? Should I key in or? That's not much. Let me get a new one.
How about Charles?
Oops, hold on. Charles who?
Lindbergh, the Lone Eagle. I understand he
Charles
came to
Lindbergh,
escape.
there is only photos, glass plates at the Chavez Library. We won't get much here either.
Okay, okay.
But,
Thank
well,
you.
we can still do it. Maybe it's much of a teaching. Charles Lindbergh flew to Santa Fe. He was hired, and he did photos of archaeological digs out here near
Yes,
Santa Fe and in New Mexico. Yeah.
yes.
So the problem here is, let me go one back, and this is with this one. The system looks for all the Charleses, and it looks for all the Lindberghs.
Oh,
We cannot do a Boolean search. Whoops, sorry, wrong way. So some of them are really irrelevant. And I would suspect most of them are, because there are 20 documents, they all have Charles in there somewhere. But let's take John Candelario, if you don't mind. Lindbergh, like I say, the History Library Photo Archive has all the glass plates and the photos of his tour in New Mexico. And they were written up by a couple of Arizona professors. They wrote something. So John Candelario, oh, that's also the palace. I want to use one of ours. If any of these materials strike you as interesting, please look at repository. Because if you're interested in aviation, we are not the University of Wyoming. We have nothing to do with them. But aviation, that gave me a good idea. Let's do Catherine Stinson. Catherine Stinson has pilot license number 4 in the country. She learned under the Wright brothers. She packed up 2 airplanes on a ship, went to China and Japan, and flew her airplanes in 1910 or 19-teens for thousands and thousands of people. And I still want to write her biography. All I have is really the title of my book, because all these school kids wrote to her after she flew in these showcases or show flights. And all these Chinese and Japanese kids who did not know English, but you can really, when you look at their notes and thank you notes, they have the English dictionary right next to them. And so among those thousands of notes, and I've read them, most of them, one stood out, and it was a kid, maybe 7, 8, 9, who says, "Dear Goddess of the Air." That's how she addressed Catherine Stinson in her thank you letter. And that's the part before the subtitle comes of my biography of Catherine Stinson, of which I haven't written a word yet, but I'm doing the research. So anyway, what I'm trying to point out here is every finding aid you will find in this database will be the same structure, the same concept, just different text. All these collections will give you a title. The dates inclusive. Sometimes we have a date bulk, which means if we receive a collection from somebody who lived in the 1950s, who collected one item from the medieval ages, then the inclusive date of that person would be 1290 to 20 or 1950, which is really unfair when there's just one item from 1250 in there. So then we enter here another date that is bulk that would then say 1940 to 1950. So we are not misleading anybody. You always want to look at the size, because when you request something, you don't want to say, I want to see the Otero Stinson papers, and you have only 1 hour. They don't want to bring up 20 boxes for 1 hour. And again, this is applicable not just to us, but to any special collection. They all have a finding aid database like this in some form or another. There is a short biography. Sometimes we write the scope and contents of what's in the various boxes, if there are any restrictions. Separated material, we put all the photos, we separate those, and they go in a separate collection. Here again, access terms from the Library of Contents. And then the most important part is what is in box 1 and in folder X. So there is Catherine Stinson's general correspondence from 1911 to 1912 in folder 3. When you come to us, you do not request by folder, you request by box. We bring up a box because we are afraid we may not know where the folder goes back to or it falls out. So we bring up boxes. And then here's Miguel Otero, Bronson cutting. You name it, you look at it. If you sort of know what you're doing on the left side, we have them by series. If you're not interested in all the correspondence part, it gets you right over here to all sorts of non-correspondence material. I'll also go into the Catherine Stinson pictorial collection. We separated those out, and quite often we have millions of photos, so we cannot do it for all of them. But in Catherine Stinson's case, we put them all online, if it shows up. So these are all Catherine Stinson's photographs. That's her brother-in-law, actually, aerial views. Catherine Stinson was rather famous, one of 4 siblings. If you ever go to San Antonio, the airport is still called the Stinson Airport or airfield down there. There's also a Stinson airplane, which is like the Pipers, a little 2-seater airplane that they did. And also Catherine's sister was a pilot. Catherine's 2 brothers were pilots. So it was a rather famous family. And here she flies at the Shanghai Expo. And these were teachers of her. I don't know how many photos, there are plenty. At the bottom, it'll tell me how many, 34 pages like that. So. And she is one of the 99ers. That is a group of the first 99 pilots. They made women pilots. They made a group out of it, and she was one of the 99ers, along with, who is missing? Who is the missing woman pilot? Nobody? Famous
Amelia
pilot.
Earhart.
Yeah, Amelia Earhart. She's also one of the 99ers. So let me go out of here. So this is one platform where you can access and learn what we own, what we have. You can start here. I usually start right in the platform itself. You can put keywords in. My strategy is the fewer words, the better, because of this non-Boolean search. You can also down here say you want to look at New Mexico. That's something also to keep in mind if you keep going on research studies or so. Don't forget that Santa Fe, Las Cruces have also very good archives. And if you have a car or when the train runs again, it's fairly easy to get up to Santa Fe to the State Record Center and Archive, or the Chavez Library, or some of the smaller specialty libraries that we have. So that is something to keep in mind. But here you can say everything New Mexico when you search, or if you know exactly, you just want to look at the Acequia Madre House, which is in Santa Fe, and the University of New Mexico, you do a control click. Then you have just these two places to search. This is our one leg. The other leg, and I linked you over there but you can also go directly over there. Again, we have this generic search box there. I will go straight. I'm almost done, Brandon. Unless this never goes to where it's supposed to go. There we go. And here, this is a database for many New Mexico institutions. We have Silver City Museum, Roswell Museum of Art. They all contribute to this. This is really a misnomer. I wouldn't check any boxes because all you get when you check, you get on the map where the place is. It doesn't help you finding it material. So you have to key it in here. What I want Catherine Stinson again. What is a Santa Fe Plaza? (109) Palace Avenue, that was the secret office of the Los Alamos Manhattan Project. When people were assigned to Los Alamos, there was no place in Los Alamos, so they all had to sign in here in Santa Fe, and then they were taken up to this top secret place, which everybody in Santa Fe in 1942, 43, 44 knew that it was up there, even though the military tried to keep it secret. And the common joke was they made windshield wipers for submarines. And that was the joke for what's happening up in Los Alamos. But anyway, there is the plaza. It had a different one. Later on, you will see an obelisk that they tore down yesterday. And lots of people are upset. And just as many are happy about it. These are stereotypes. When you come in, I can show you there's a contraption to this picture. You put it into that contraption, and you have to move it slowly away from your eyes. It's like glasses with a little contraption in front. And if you slowly move it away from your eyes, there will be a sweet spot where it's a three-dimensional photograph. That's what these stereotypes are called. And again, I bought a couple of contraptions on eBay so we can show people. There's the obelisk. No, that's the different one. No, it is. No, it isn't. I'm not sure. You can click in. There is data for it, metadata, when the photo was taken, if we know who took it. I don't think that is the obelisk on the plaza. Maybe it is. Anyway, yesterday they tore it down, but I think this one is in front of the courthouse, which they also took down out of safety reasons, but 50 years ago or whenever already. Not sure which one that is. So my point here would be that in this database, you can actually see the images, read the letters, you can search here. After a while, when you have searched something, you can also go directly to what we call a bucket. And for us, we have buckets for the railway photographs. Bunting was an architect, bunting photographs. We have also some books on there. That means you can actually read them if it's a book of interest to you for your purpose. Now it will take too long. So there's a description of a view of the city of Mexico. Tone Hilleman in Finnish, we put up, oh, it's just a book cover. They didn't put up the book. So these seem to be all book covers. That's kind of a misnomer, but some of them have actually the text in there. So you can go over here if you don't want to search and get far too many of these materials. Where is one with papers, not with photos? Anyway, this is posters then, so also different. But we also, you will find there letters. You will find audios. You can hear some of the recordings, and you can see some film at times. And so everything in this database might help you if, because of COVID, you have to stay put. Let me get out of all those again. I have one more to share, but I can stop if that's what you want.
No, I think you could go ahead, and of course, if anyone needs to go because you have other things going on and you only planned through 3, that's totally understandable. But if you could stay, I'm happy to stay.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah,
5
go ahead.
minutes. Let me just find it again. So again, these are the 2 mainstay of how you find our materials. The Rocky Mountain Online Archive, which is simply a finding aid to our materials. The New Mexico, and on the Rocky Mountain, there are 2 other states on there, Colorado and Wyoming, but that's gonna go away. We lost the license and we needed a new platform, but that'll take another year. New Mexico Digital Collections is simply where you can actually go and read a letter, visit an image, see a map. And so this is the actual item. We also have, I want to talk vertical files last, but we also have exhibits. The only one that we were doing that we were prepared to put online is George Orwell. And there are the various entries to that collection. This was a donation. Somewhere I also, because I spent money on it, where is it? Yeah, and I had a high school teacher make a lesson plan for K-12 based on George Orwell. So, and the current exhibit that we were planning for April was on tamarind printing and printmaking. And that's going to take us a while longer. If you are interested in anything related directly to the university archive or the university, we have a special archive. It overlaps sometimes. Sometimes it's in here. But if you want to find out salaries of staff from 1940 or so, you would find them in this collection, and you have to search it here. The Daily Lobo is in here with spots, but it's all scanned, you can read it. And there are other materials in there. Under other resources, we have newspapers. We have all sorts of research guides that may help you with when you are researching African American. J.B. Jackson was an architect photographer for, what is it called? Colloquial architecture, or mundane architecture. There's a specific word, I don't remember it right now. Land grants, Route 66, you name it. We did this, we're taking this down because it's not used. We have the Tony Hillerman portal where we have all of his materials scanned, some of his letters scanned, annotations of his notes scanned. And then in the digital repository, you will find material, dissertations, theses, or faculty papers, everything as it pertains to UNM. Clipping files, that's what I was showing you before. Now, we did not and we will not scan anything. All you will find out here is, what is it? Albuquerque art. Nope, they didn't fix it. We got hijacked on that and it went to a outside commercial site. That is kind of a bummer. Okay, so the direct way I can get to it. So in A, for instance, all this will tell you is that we have a folder on the writer Ed or author Ed Abbey, who wrote The Monkey Wrench Gang. He spoke about, he spoke about, let me pull out the power of this computer and put it in here. He spoke about environmental issues. He was also interested in a very radical group, Earth First, which papers, that group's papers we have now here at UNM, because the founder lives in Albuquerque. When I worked for Stanford 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I flew into Albuquerque and visited him with checkbook in hand to buy his papers for Stanford. And I don't remember, we just couldn't come to an agreement, or he wasn't ready to let go. Money, I don't think at the time was an issue. When I started here at UNM in 2016, I wrote to 4 George Foreman, David Foreman, not George Foreman, the boxer, Dave Foreman. I wrote to 4 of them because I didn't know where he was at the time. And one of them answered, the right one answered, and his wife wanted all that junk out of their garage. And this time I got the material for free for UNM, and I'm very happy about that. So my point is here that we have stuff on all these items, and they are just a folder. You cannot ask, most likely, I mean, under COVID maybe, but usually there is nothing scanned. You have to come in and say, I want to see the vertical files for African Americans for all these decades of whatever. And then you can request them, but under COVID, I wouldn't bother doing that right now, but I'm not sure where the request goes to, but it goes to one of my colleagues or to me. But then you have to also make an appointment that we let you in the first place. So an email is better at this point, but you can see here whatever it is we have on any topic. And again, some of the files are really good, really great, because we collected for a long time. Other pieces have 1 item in there. Some have flyers in there or pamphlets. So it is up to you, but don't discount these clipping files when you are starting. Even if you're just starting out, a clipping file may save you the first 1, 2, 3 weeks of research until you are focused on what you might actually want to look for. That's it. Anybody, any questions? Thank you for being patient with me.
Thanks very much for mentioning Catherine Stinson. She was a very impressive woman in her day, a very impressive woman even today.
Yep, And I love Catherine Stinson, and I dislike her husband very much, but that's a whole other issue. He was a judge. And they were both pilots. He was also in the Army Corps, whatever it was called in World War One. And she had a rough last 15 years. I haven't quite figured out yet what her illness was, most likely Parkinson. But from the description of her husband, she basically was awake, eyes open, but was in a coma. And I haven't quite figured it out. And that was for her last 15 years. She passed away at age 88 or so. She also, after flying, did a lot of architectural work, sometimes worked with John Garmin. She's absolutely a fascinating woman. My two historical women that I'm in love with is Dorothy Brett, the artist in Taos, and Catherine Stinson, the pilot.
Yeah, there's a local chapter of the Women in Aviation International that I'm sure would love to learn more.
Oh yeah, I love talking about her. Again, I have notes and notes and notes, and I haven't written not a single word on my biography, but whatever. Anybody else? And I will forward to Brandon my contact information. Please don't hesitate to just email me. Don't worry if you feel like it's a silly question or not. There is none. I will certainly answer, and I will also see if I can help you guide your research a little bit. Do they have to write papers, Brandon?
Couldn't unmute. Yeah, so they're going to do a digital research project. So
Okay.
the short answer is yes, but it's not going to be like a traditional essay. So
yeah, but you still need to do some research. And the nice part also is, I mean, I know everything that thin, but when I don't know something, I still have enough colleagues who I can ask if they have a better idea or a smarter idea. My expertise is to know very little about everything. And where I don't know it, I still have an opinion. So
that's wonderful.
thank you
I want
very
to thank
much.
you again, yeah, for coming and for talking with us. I really appreciate it and being so gracious with your time. So yeah,
My
so
pleasure.
thanks to everyone who attended as well.
Thank you. Please stay well and let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.